Cole Bennett had buried 3 men on this land. 2 of them were his parents. The third was the old version of himself, the man who once believed that love and happiness belonged to luckier souls. April 1875, the Colorado sky hung low and heavy, pressing down on Prairie Wind Ranch like a promise of rain. Cole stood on the ridge overlooking his domain, 15 square miles of grazing land his father had carved from wilderness 20 years ago. Below 500 head of cattle dotted the valley, their dark shapes moving slow against spring grass. 30 horses grazed near the barn. 12 hired men worked the fence lines, their distant figures bent against wind that carried the scent of coming storm. His father had spent 20 years building this empire. 9 years ago, he'd placed it on Cole's shoulders with his dying breath. Now it felt less like inheritance, more like sentence. The weight settled familiar on his chest. 32 years old, no wife, no children. No one to pass this legacy forward to except Blake, his younger brother, who cared more about wild horses than responsibility. Cole turned his back on the view and walked down toward the ranch house. His boots found purchase on familiar stone, each step a memory. His father had taught him to walk this path in darkness. Now he could do it blind. The main house rose 2 stories of logs weathered silver by mountain sun and winter snow. Smoke curled from the stone chimney. Through windows glowing orange with lamplight, he could see movement. Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeper, preparing breakfast. The ranch hands would arrive soon, hungry men with calloused hands and simple needs. Cole pushed through the door into warmth and the smell of coffee. Blake sat at the head of the long table, boots propped on another chair, grinning at something one of the hands had said. 24 years old and still acting like the world owed him adventure. "Morning, brother," Blake called out, that easy smile never leaving his face. "Sleep well," Cole grunted, pouring coffee from the pot Mrs. Henderson had left warming. The bitter heat felt good going down. Mrs. Henderson emerged from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands. 50-something with silver hair, pulled tight, and eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Bennett," she said, addressing Cole, with the formality she'd maintained since his father died, "we need to discuss the cook situation. Old Jack quit last week, said his back couldn't take it no more." She fixed Cole with that look that had made him squirm as a boy. "We need someone who can feed 12 men 3 times a day, and soon." Cole nodded, mind already calculating. Spring roundup started in 2 weeks. Men worked harder on full bellies. "I'll find someone in Silverton." "Better make it today," Mrs. Henderson said. "I can manage breakfast, but I've got too much else to handle." Blake swung his feet down, leaning forward with sudden interest. "I'll ride with you. Need to pick up supplies anyway." Cole knew what supplies meant. Whiskey and women, probably in that order. But he nodded. Sometimes it was easier to have Blake where he could see him. The morning passed in the rhythm Cole knew by heart. Check the horses, walk the near pastures. Talk to Peterson, his oldest hand, about the fence line work. The man was 60, had worked for Cole's father before Cole was born. His weathered face held more wisdom than most books. "Boss," Peterson said, squinting at the western sky. "Storm's coming, big one from the look of it." Cole followed his gaze. Dark clouds massed over the peaks, heavy and bruised. "How long?" "Tonight, maybe tomorrow. Could be rough." "Get the men to secure everything. Bring the horses in close." Peterson nodded and walked away, his bow-legged gait familiar as family. By noon, Cole and Blake were riding towards Silverton. The town lay 15 miles east, nestled in a valley where 3 creeks met. It had grown in the 5 years since silver was found in the mountains. What started as a mining camp now had a main street, a bank, 2 saloons, a church, and enough decent folks to make it almost respectable. The wind picked up as they rode, carrying the metallic scent of coming rain. Cole's horse, a big bay gelding named Ranger, moved steady beneath him. Blake rode alongside on a flashy paint, the kind of horse that looked good but lacked sense. "You ever think about leaving?" Blake asked suddenly. Cole glanced at him. "Leaving where?" "The ranch, this life, all of it." "Every day," Cole said, honest because Blake was his brother. "Then I remember it's all we've got." Blake fell silent. That was the difference between them. Cole felt the weight of what they'd inherited. Blake felt the weight of what it might have on. Thunder rumbled distant as they reached Silverton's outskirts. The main street bustled with afternoon traffic. Wagons loaded with ore from the mines. Merchants sweeping boardwalks. Women in good dresses hurrying between shops. Cole tied Ranger outside the general store and stepped under the awning just as the first drops began to fall. Large, heavy drops that promised deluge. That's when he saw her, a young woman huddled against the store's wall, clutching a worn shawl tied around her shoulders. She couldn't have been more than 22, with dark hair escaping from a simple bun and green eyes that looked out at the street with something harder than fear. Determination, maybe, or desperation wearing determination's face. What struck Cole wasn't her beauty, though she was beautiful in a quiet way that made him think of wildflowers in high meadows. What struck him was her posture, straight-backed, chin lifted. Despite the rain, despite whatever circumstances had brought her to shelter under a stranger's awning, she stood like someone who refused to bend. Then she shifted, reaching for a bag at her feet, and Cole saw it. The twist in her left leg, the way she compensated weight carried different. "You best get inside before you catch your death," Mr. Daniels called from the doorway. The old shopkeeper had kind eyes set deep in a lined face. "Can't have folks drowning on my porch." "Thank you, sir," the woman said, her voice carrying strength that matched her spine. "But I haven't the money for a room just yet. I've come for work." She paused, lifting her chin another fraction. "My cousin mentioned there might be opportunities here." Daniel's expression shifted to something Cole had seen too often. Pity. It crawled across the old man's features like oil on water. "Work's hard to come by for a young woman in these parts." His eyes drifted to her leg, then away quick, ashamed. Especially for a cripple," the woman finished, her voice stronger than ever. "It's all right, sir. I've heard worse." She straightened, impossibly taller. "I can cook, clean, sew, and I read and write better than most school teachers. I just need a chance." Cole found himself stepping forward before he'd decided to move. "Mr. Daniels," he said, "got those supplies ready? We need to head back before this gets any worse." Three riders approached through the rain horses, massive against the storm's gray backdrop. Cole had left Blake to handle his own business. Now he swung down from Ranger with the fluid ease of a man who'd been born in the saddle. As he stepped onto the porch, he removed his hat, revealing dark hair and a face weathered by sun and wind that made him look older than his years. His eyes, startling blue even in the dim light, met the woman's. For a moment, neither spoke. He saw something in those green eyes. Not plea, not hope. Just frank assessment, woman to man equals measuring each other. "Cole Bennett," he said, offering a nod instead of his rain-soaked hand. Old habits from his father. A man's word mattered more than his grip. "Emma Harrison," she replied, and he noticed she didn't curtsy or simper or do any of the things women usually did. She met his eyes steady. "You're new to Silverton." "Not a question. Just arrived today. Came from St. Louis." "Long journey." 3 weeks. 3 weeks alone on the road, for a woman with that leg. Cole felt something shift in his chest, recognition of a strength he understood, the kind that came from having no choice but to be strong. Mr. Daniels emerged with parcels wrapped in oilcloth. "Mr. Bennett, this young lady's looking for work. Says she can cook and such." Cole studied Emma Harrison. Really studied her. Not the leg, not the worn dress or the way rain had plastered hair to her cheeks. He studied the set of her jaw, the directness in her gaze, the way she stood, despite being exhausted and wet, and probably scared, though she'd die before showing it. Prairie Wind had lost their cook. Mrs. Henderson needed help. These were facts. But something else decided him. Something about the way this woman refused to flinch under his examination. The way she looked at him like she could see past the silence and the scars to whatever lived underneath. "Lost our cook last month," he said. "Ranch work is hard. Days start before dawn and end long after dark." "I'm no stranger to hard work, Mr. Bennett." Emma lifted her chin. "And I don't expect special treatment." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. First real smile, and he couldn't remember how long. "Didn't think you would." He glanced at the sky. The storm was getting worse, rain coming harder now, turning the street to mud. "You got somewhere to stay tonight." Emma hesitated. Pride and necessity whirred across her face. Pride lost. "Not yet." Cole didn't wait for more. He turned to where he'd left his horse. "Blake," he called to his brother who'd emerged from the saloon across the street. "Head back and tell Mrs. Henderson we've got a potential new cook. I'll bring Miss Harrison along." "Mr. Bennett," Emma protested, "I haven't agreed to anything." "True enough." He retrieved a second horse from the hitching post, a gentle-looking mare. "But you need shelter tonight, and we need a cook." Seems like a fair arrangement for now. He saw her weighing it, saw the calculation. A stranger's ranch versus a night in the rain with no money and no prospects. Can you ride? He asked. Emma swallowed. Not well, and not with... She gestured vaguely at her leg, the first acknowledgement she'd made of it. Cole nodded, seemingly unbothered. He gathered her meager belongings, a single worn bag that told its own story, and secured it to the mare. Then, with surprising gentleness for a man his size, he helped her mount his own horse before swinging up behind her. Hold tight, he murmured, his breath warm against her ear, as his arms came around her to take the reins. As they rode out of town, Emma found herself pressed against the solid warmth of his chest, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake or the best decision of her life. The rain fell steady as they left Silverton behind. Cole kept Ranger to a walk, partly for the conditions, partly because he could feel Emma's tension. She held herself rigid, trying not to lean into him, trying to maintain some distance in a situation that allowed none. Relax, he said after a mile. Horse can feel your nerves. I don't make a habit of riding with strange men, she replied, voice tight. Fair point. He adjusted his grip on the reins, which meant adjusting his arms around her. But I'm not strange, just quiet. She made a sound that might have been a laugh. How far is your ranch? 15 miles. We'll be there by dark if the storm doesn't get worse. They rode in silence for a while. The rain soaked through Cole's duster, but he kept Emma mostly dry by angling his body as windbreak. He found himself noticing things. The way she smelled faintly of lavender despite days on the road. The competent way her hands gripped the saddle horn. No panic, just caution. The straightness of her spine even now. Your father's ranch, she asked eventually. Was. He died 9 years ago. Left it to me and my brother. I'm sorry. Don't be. He lived the life he wanted. More silence. Then Emma said, my parents died when I was 16. Influenza. Cole nodded against the rain. Hard age to lose them. Any age is hard. True enough. The landscape opened up as they climbed out of the valley. Mountains rose on all sides, their peaks hidden in cloud. This was big country, the kind that made men feel small and either broke them or made them stronger. Cole had been born to it, knew its moods like he knew his own heartbeat. It's beautiful, Emma said softly, and he heard genuine wonder in her voice. It grows on you. He pointed ahead where a break in the clouds showed a glimpse of sunset gold and crimson bleeding across the western sky. My father brought us here when I was 12. Blake was 4. It was wilderness then. Took years to build what you'll see. You must be proud of what you've accomplished. The word struck something in Cole's chest. Proud. Was that what he felt, or just tired? It's something, he said finally. As they crested the final ridge, Prairie Wind Ranch spread below them. The main house with its wide porch, the barn and outbuildings, the corrals holding horses. Even in rain and fading light, it looked solid, permanent, the kind of place that would outlast the men who built it. That's home, Cole said, and something in his voice made it sound like confession and resignation all at once. Emma drew a breath. It's more than I expected. Good or bad? Good. Definitely good. They rode down to the main house. Light spilled from windows, promising warmth. As they approached, a figure emerged onto the porch. Mrs. Henderson, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Cole dismounted first, then reached up to help Emma down. His hands spanned her waist easily. For a moment, he held her suspended, feeling the fragility beneath all that strength. Then he lowered her carefully to the ground. Emma winced slightly as her bad leg took weight. Just a flicker across her features, quickly controlled. We'll get you settled inside, Cole said, noticing but not mentioning. His father had taught him that kindness sometimes meant seeing things and saying nothing. Miss Henderson approached, eyes already assessing Emma with the thoroughness of a drill sergeant inspecting recruits. So you're the potential cook? Yes, ma'am. Emma met her gaze without flinching. Amamwa, Emma Harrison. Can you make a decent stew, girl? Yes, ma'am, and bread pies and just about anything else you might want. Mrs. Henderson's mouth twitched. Might have been approval. We'll see about that. Come along then. Emma gathered her skirts, careful with her leg, and followed Mrs. Henderson toward the house. Cole watched them go, watched Emma's determined gait, the way she refused to hurry despite the rain, because hurrying would mean showing struggle. Blake appeared from the barn, grinning. She's pretty. She's a cook, Cole said. Can be both. Cole shot his brother a look. She's off limits. Blake's grin widened. Interesting. You've known her all of an hour and already she's off limits. Don't start. Wouldn't dream of it. Blake clapped Cole on the shoulder. But that's the most alive I've seen you look in years. Cole wanted to argue, couldn't. So he turned and led Ranger toward the barn, leaving Blake laughing in the rain. Inside the house was warm and smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Mrs. Henderson was showing Emma the kitchen, a spacious room with a massive cast iron stove and ample workspace. Through the doorway, Cole could hear their voices. Kitchen's through here. You'll be cooking for Mr. Bennett, his brother, and about 10 ranch hands depending on the season. Breakfast at dawn, dinner at noon, supper at 6. You'll have Sundays to yourself. That's more than fair, ma'am. Your room's off the kitchen. A pause. Not much, but it's private. Cole stepped into the kitchen doorway just as Mrs. Henderson opened a small door, revealing a tidy room with a narrow bed, chest of drawers, and a window looking toward the mountains. Simple. Clean. More than most hired help got. Emma's face transformed. It's perfect, Mrs. Henderson nodded, pleased despite herself. Wages are $20 a month plus room and board, if that suits you. It was more than Emma had dared hope for. Cole could see it in the way her eyes widened and the slight tremor in her voice when she said, "It suits me very well." Good, Mrs. Henderson looked at Cole. We'll try it for a month, see how it works out for both of us. After she left to finish evening in the kitchen doorway, Emma stood by the window looking out at the rain and mountains beyond. Mr. Bennett, she said without turning, why did you hire me? Honest question deserved honest answer. Mrs. Henderson needed help. You needed work. You didn't even ask if I could cook. Didn't need to. Now she turned confusion clear on her face. How could you possibly know? Cole moved into the kitchen, poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot always warming on the stove. He handed her one. Your hands, they've got burn scars. Grease splatters. You've spent time in kitchens. Emma looked down at her hands, surprised he'd noticed something so small. Also, Cole continued, you came 3 weeks alone from St. Louis to a mining town because your cousin said there might be work. That's not desperation. That's determination. He met her eyes. Determined people figure out how to do what needs doing. She studied him over the rim of her coffee cup. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know, but not this. Cole almost smiled. Get some rest, Miss Harrison. Morning comes early. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. That leg of yours, does it pain you much? The directness of the question asked without pity or judgment startled her. Most people pretended not to notice or avoided the subject entirely. Some days are worse than others, Emma answered honestly. Rain makes it ache, standing too long as well. But I've learned to manage. Cole nodded thoughtfully. There's a stool by the pantry. Use it when you need to. No sense suffering needlessly. Before she could respond, he was gone, his bootsteps fading down the hall. Emma stood alone in her new kitchen, in her new life, holding coffee a stranger had poured her, and for the first time in months, she felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. The next morning came dark and early, just as Cole had promised. Emma woke to Mrs. Henderson's brisk knock, the sky outside her window barely lightening to gray. Despite exhaustion from travel and the strangeness of a new bed, she dressed quickly. The small mercy was her room's proximity to the kitchen. Minimal walking before she'd had time to work the stiffness from her leg. Men will be in soon, Mrs. Henderson said by way of greeting. Coffee's brewing. They'll want eggs, bacon, biscuits, and potatoes. Think you can manage? Absolutely. For the next hour, Emma worked steadily, finding rhythm in the well-organized kitchen. The stove was temperamental but responsive once she learned its moods. By the time Boots stomped on the porch outside, she had platters of food ready and biscuits browning in the oven. The ranch hands filed in mumbling good mornings as they helped themselves to coffee. Emma studied them quickly. Working men with sun-darkened faces and calloused hands. The kind who measured worth in results, not words. Cole entered last hair damp from washing shirt sleeves rolled to reveal forearms roped with muscle. He nodded to Emma, his expression unreadable, then took his place at the head of the long table. Smells good, he said simply as she placed a plate before him. The meal passed in a blur of activity. Emma served refilled coffee cups, pulled fresh biscuits from the oven. She was grateful for the kitchen's layout, which allowed her to minimize movement while keeping everything within reach. The ranch hands ate with single-minded focus, offering grunts of appreciation between bites. As the men finished and headed out to begin their day's work, Cole lingered at the table cradling his coffee cup. When they were alone, he looked up at Emma. "Everything satisfactory?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. Everyone's been very kind." He watched her work for a moment, gathering dishes with efficient movements. "Your leg, does it pain you much?" The question asked so directly again still caught her off guard. "I told you last night, some days worse than others." The stool by the pantry. "Use it." It wasn't suggestion. It was instruction given by a man who noticed things and acted on them. Emma found herself nodding. Cole stood chair, scraping against wood floor. "I'll be checking fence lines today. Back by supper." He paused at the door. "You did good this morning, Miss Harrison." Then he was gone, leaving Emma with dirty dishes and a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the stove. The week settled into routine. Emma rose before dawn, prepared meals, cleaned, and slowly learned the rhythm of ranch life. The work was hard but honest. The men were respectful. Mrs. Henderson proved a demanding but fair teacher. And Cole was a mystery Emma found herself wanting to solve. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. He noticed things. The way Emma favored her leg after long days, the books she read in evening lamplight, the small improvements she made to kitchen organization. One afternoon a week into her employment, Cole entered through the kitchen's back door carrying something Emma couldn't immediately identify. A wooden object, three-legged and sturdy. "Mr. Bennett," she said, looking up from kneading bread dough. "Got a moment?" He placed the object on the table. A stool, she realized. But unlike the simple milking stool already in the kitchen, this one had a padded leather seat and polished finish. The work of someone who knew woodcraft. "Noticed you were using that old stool when your leg troubles you," Cole said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Thought this might be more comfortable. Had it in the storeroom." Emma stared at the stool, then at Cole. The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught her completely off guard. This wasn't something thrown together. This was crafted, planned. "Thank you," she said softly. "That's very kind." He shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. "Just practical. Need our cook in good working order." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "The apple pie yesterday, it was good. Best I've had since my mother's." With that, he was gone, leaving Emma staring after him, with flour on her hands and tears threatening her eyes. A strange warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the heat of the stove. That evening, as she served supper, Emma found herself more aware of Cole's presence than before. He sat at the head of the table, speaking little but listening intently to his men's reports on the day's work. There was quiet authority in his manner, confidence without arrogance. Blake, seated at Cole's right, dominated conversation with tales of a wild horse he'd spotted in the north pasture. "Beautiful creature," he enthused, "black as midnight with a white star on his forehead. I'm going to catch him." "That stallion's been running these hills for years," Peterson commented. The old ranch hand sat near the foot of the table, his weathered face creased with experience. "Many have tried to catch him. None succeeded." "None of them were me," Blake replied with a grin. Cole shook his head slightly. "We have plenty of horses that need attention without chasing wild ones through the mountains. Where's your sense of adventure, brother?" Blake's tone was light, but Emma detected an undercurrent of tension. "Adventure doesn't keep the ranch running," Cole replied evenly, "or pay the men." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Emma quickly intervened, bringing out fresh baked berry cobbler that drew appreciative murmurs and effectively changed the subject. Later, as she washed dishes, she heard boots on the porch and glanced up to see Cole leaning against the doorframe watching her. "You shouldn't have to work this late," he said. "I don't mind. It's peaceful after the day's bustle." Emma dried her hands on a towel. "Was everything to your liking?" "More than satisfactory." He entered the kitchen, fully moving to stand near the stove where coffee still kept warm. "May I?" "Please help yourself." He poured a cup, then, after a moment's hesitation, gestured to the table. "Would you join me if you're not too tired?" Surprised, Emma nodded and took a seat. Cole poured a second cup and placed it before her before sitting across the table. "Mrs. Henderson speaks highly of your work," he said after a moment. She's been very helpful in showing me how things are done here. Cole nodded, turning his cup slowly between his hands. And how are you finding Prairie Wind? It's wonderful, Emma answered honestly. I've never lived somewhere so beautiful. It grows on you. A small smile softened his features. My father brought us here when I was 12. Blake was just 4. It was wilderness then. Took years to build it into what you see now. You must be very proud of what you've accomplished. His eyes met hers, intense and searching. I am. This land, it gets in your blood. Becomes part of you. He paused. Your family. They're in St. Louis still. Emma looked down at her cup. I have cousins there, but we're not close. My parents died of influenza when I was 16. After that, I was more of a burden than family to my relatives. Because of your leg. It wasn't a question. Partly, and partly because I was another mouth to feed. She shrugged, trying to appear unconcerned, though the memory still stung. My cousin Martha took me in, but it was clear I wasn't welcome. I worked as a seamstress, gave most of my earnings to help with expenses, but it was never enough. Cole's jaw tightened. Some people lack common decency. They had their own troubles, Emma said, though she appreciated his indignation on her behalf. But when Martha mentioned Silverton was growing, I saved every penny until I had enough for the journey. I needed to make my own way. That takes courage, Cole said quietly. Or desperation, she replied with a small smile. Maybe both. His eyes held hers. But I'm glad you came. They talked for nearly an hour, the conversation flowing more easily than Emma would have expected. Cole spoke of the challenges of ranching in the high country, the harsh winters and dry summers. He described his plans for expanding their cattle operation, improving the bloodlines of their horses. Though he spoke modestly, Emma could hear the pride and passion in his voice. When he finally rose to leave, Cole hesitated, as if wanting to say something more. Instead, he simply nodded. Thank you for the coffee, Miss Harrison, and the conversation. You're welcome, Mr. Bennett. Any time. After he left, Emma remained at the table reflecting on their conversation. Cole Bennett was not what she'd initially thought. Not simply stern and reserved, but thoughtful, intelligent, and deeply committed to his responsibilities. And she admitted to herself more handsome than she'd allowed herself to notice, especially when that rare smile transformed his face. But such thoughts were dangerous. A man like Cole would want a whole woman, not one with a twisted leg who could never be a proper rancher's wife. And regardless of his kindness toward her, she'd seen no indication that he viewed her as anything more than an employee. Still, as she readied for bed that night, Emma found herself humming a tune her mother used to sing, something she hadn't done in years. The next days brought clear skies and the promise of warmth after weeks of spring chill. Emma settled deeper into ranch life, finding satisfaction in her work. The kitchen became her domain, a place where her leg mattered less than her skill with flour and butter. Cole remained politely distant, speaking to her mainly about practical matters. Supplies needed from town, the number of men to feed, preferences for certain dishes. Yet Emma often caught him watching her when he thought she wouldn't notice his expression unreadable. Blake, by contrast, made a point of seeking her out. He'd linger after meals, telling stories that made her laugh, or bring wildflowers he claimed to have just happened upon during his rides. His attention was flattering, though Emma maintained careful reserve. She'd learned early that men might flirt with the limping girl, but they rarely meant anything serious by it. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Emma was kneading bread dough when Blake appeared, dressed for riding in leather vest and chaps, a bandana loosely tied around his neck. Good afternoon, Emma, he said, helping himself to coffee. He'd long since abandoned formality despite Cole's disapproval. Good afternoon, you're up early. Going after that wild stallion today. His eyes sparkled with excitement. Want to come watch? I could saddle a gentle mare for you. Emma laughed, shaking her head. I have bread to bake and dinner to prepare. Besides, I'm not much of a rider. Because of your leg. When she nodded, he shrugged. That shouldn't stop you. I could teach you another time. Perhaps. Blake leaned against the counter, watching her work. You know you're different from most women I've met. How so, son? They usually jump at any invitation I offer. Emma kept her eyes on the dough. Perhaps I'm just more dedicated to my position. Or perhaps you've already set your sights elsewhere. Blake's gaze turned speculative. I've noticed how you look at my brother. Emma nearly dropped the bowl she was holding. I don't know what you mean. No, Blake grinned. I've seen the way your eyes follow him when he enters a room, the way you smile when he speaks to you. Mr. Bennett is my employer, Emma said firmly, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Nothing more. If you say so, Blake pushed away from the counter, grabbing an apple from the bowl on the table. But I should warn you, Cole hasn't looked twice at a woman since Victoria Sterling rejected his proposal 5 years ago, said she couldn't bear the isolation of ranch life. The revelation sent an unexpected pang through Emma's heart. I wasn't aware of Mr. Bennett's personal history, nor is it my business. Just thought you should know. Blake took a bite of the apple, speaking around it. Cole's a good man, but he's closed himself off. Puts everything into this ranch, nothing into living. He winked. Me, on the other hand, I believe in enjoying life while you can. Before Emma could respond, the back door opened and Cole entered. His eyes narrowed slightly at the twist of his brother lounging in the kitchen. Thought you'd be saddled up by now, he said. Peterson and Riley are waiting. Just getting some sustenance for the hunt, Blake replied, holding up the apple. He winked at Emma. Think about what I said. After he left, Cole turned to Emma, his expression questioning. Everything all right? Fine, she replied, turning back to her work to hide flushed cheeks. Your brother was just being friendly. Something like concern flickered across Cole's face. Blake can be overly friendly at times. If he ever makes you uncomfortable, he doesn't, Emma assured him quickly. He's been nothing but kind. Cole nodded, though he didn't look entirely convinced. I'll be in town today. Need anything from the mercantile? They discussed supplies for a few minutes, the earlier awkwardness fading. As he prepared to leave, Cole paused. Would you like anything for your cell book? And perhaps I've noticed you reading that worn novel of yours several evenings. The fact that he'd noticed such a detail surprised her. I would love something new to read, if it's not too much trouble. No trouble at all. His voice softened. Any preferences? I enjoy stories of adventure and poetry. She smiled shyly. Escape, I suppose. Cole's eyes held hers for a long moment. We all need that sometimes, he said quietly before bidding her good day. After he left, Emma found herself distracted as she worked her thoughts alternating between Cole's thoughtfulness and Blake's warning about his brother's closed heart. By mid-afternoon, the men had returned from their morning work for dinner. Blake was notably absent, still out on his quest for the wild stallion. As Emma served hearty stew, Peterson mentioned storm clouds building in the west. Could be a bad one, he commented. Barometer's falling fast. Another hand nodded agreement. Wind's picking up too. Young Blake best get back before it hits. Worry creased the foreheads of several men. Mountain storms could develop quickly and turn dangerous, especially in the higher elevations where Blake had gone hunting for the wild horse. The meal continued with subdued conversation, the men eating quickly before heading back out to secure equipment and animals before the storm hit. Cole, who had returned from town just before dinner, remained at the table after the others left, his expression growing more concerned as he glanced out the window at the darkening sky. He should have been back by now, he said almost to himself. Emma, clearing dishes, paused beside him. Perhaps he found shelter somewhere. Cole shook his head. There's nothing in that direction except the old McCulwiff cabin, and it's more ruin than shelter these days. He stood abruptly. I'm going to look for him. But the storm is exactly why I need to find him. Cole was already moving toward the door. If he's injured or lost. Emma followed him onto the porch where wind whipped at her skirts and loosened tendrils of hair from her bun. At least take someone with you. It's too dangerous to go alone. The men are securing the ranch. I can't spare them. He turned to face her, his eyes reflecting the turbulent sky. Don't worry, I know these mountains better than anyone. Before she could protest further, he strode toward the barn. Minutes later, he emerged on horseback, a rifle secured to his saddle and saddlebags likely packed with emergency supplies. As he rode past the house, he raised a hand in farewell, then urged his horse into a gallop toward the gathering storm. Emma watched until he disappeared into the trees, an inexplicable dread settling in her heart. She'd known these men barely 2 weeks yet. The thought of either of them injured or worse in the mountains caused her physical pain. Mrs. Henderson appeared beside her, the housekeeper's usual stoic expression replaced by worry. Come inside, girl. Standing out here won't bring them back sooner. For the next several hours, Emma tried to focus on preparing supper, but her attention constantly drifted to the windows. The storm hit with full force, rain lashing against glass, thunder shaking the house to its foundations, lightning illuminating the yard in brief, stark flashes. The ranch hands who came in for the evening meal were soaked and somber, their conversation revolving around the missing Bennett brothers. Cole will find him, Peterson said with conviction. Never known a man with better sense of direction or more determination. Others nodded agreement, but as evening wore on with no sign of either man, even the most optimistic grew quiet. After the men had eaten and returned to the bunkhouse, Emma remained in the kitchen, unable to retire while two men were still out in the storm. Mrs. Henderson brought her a shawl as the night air grew chill. "You should rest," she said gently. "There's nothing you can do now but pray." "I'll just wait a little longer," Emma replied, settling onto a chair near the window. The housekeeper sighed. Stubborn girl. But she bustled about preparing tea, then sat across from Emma. "You've grown fond of them, haven't you, the brothers?" Emma stared into her teacup. "They've both been kind to me in different ways." "I'd wager." Mrs. Henderson's shrewd eyes studied her. "Blake's charm is easy to like. Cole's harder to know, but worth the effort." "It doesn't matter," Emma said softly. "I'm just the cook." "Nonsense. I've seen how the elder Mr. Bennett looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. Like a man seeing sunlight after a long winter." Emma shook her head, not allowing herself to hope. "You're mistaken. Why would a man like him look twice at someone like me?" Mrs. Henderson's expression softened. "Because he sees what I see. A strong young woman with more courage and kindness than most people possess. That leg of yours doesn't define you, girl, no matter what others have made you believe." Before Emma could respond, the sound of hoofbeats penetrated the storm's roar. She was on her feet instantly, hobbling to the door, despite pain in her leg after sitting so long. Through sheets of rain, she could make out a single horse approaching a dark figure slumped in the saddle. As it drew closer, she saw it was Cole's mount, but he wasn't riding alone. Another form was draped across the saddle in front of him, Blake apparently unconscious. Emma called for help. Ranch hands emerged from the bunkhouse, rushing to assist. They helped Cole dismount, then carefully lifted Blake from the horse. In the light spilling from the doorway, Emma could see blood matting Blake's hair and soaking Cole's shirt. "Get him inside," Cole ordered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "Careful of his leg. Think it's broken." They carried Blake into the house and laid him on the dining table as Mrs. Henderson quickly cleared it. The younger Bennett's face was ghostly pale beneath dirt and blood, his breathing shallow. "Found him at the base of a ravine," Cole explained as he cut away Blake's torn clothing. "Horse must have spooked in the storm and thrown him. He was unconscious when I got there." Emma moved to help, bringing clean water and cloths. "We should send for the doctor." Cole shook his head grimly. No one could make it to town in this storm, and by the time they reached the doctor and brought him back, he didn't finish the sentence, but his meaning was clear. For the next hour, they worked to clean and treat Blake's injuries. His right leg was indeed broken, the bone, thankfully not protruding through skin. Cole, with Peterson's help, set it as best they could, using pieces of a wooden crate as splints. The head wound was their greatest concern, a deep gash that continued to seep blood despite their efforts to staunch it. Through it all, Blake remained unconscious, occasionally moaning but never waking. When they'd done all they could, Cole had the men carry his brother upstairs to his bedroom. As they left, Cole sank into a chair at the now cleared table, his face haggard with worry and fatigue. Emma brought him a towel for his rain-soaked hair and a cup of hot coffee laced with whiskey. "You should change it to dry clothes before you catch your death," she said softly. He looked up at her, his blue eyes dark with emotion. "I almost didn't find him. If I'd been even an hour later." "But you weren't." Emma knelt beside his chair. "You found him, and he's alive because of you." Cole ran a hand over his face. "He never should have been out there alone. I knew that storm was coming. I should have insisted he take someone with him." "Blake makes his own choices," Emma said gently. "From what little I know of him, I doubt he would have listened even if you had insisted." A ghost of a smile touched Cole's lips. "You've got him figured out already." The smile faded. "But he's my responsibility. Has been since our parents died." "You were hardly more than a boy yourself then," Emma reminded him. Cole's eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "Thank you for that, and for your help tonight. I did very little." "You were here," he said simply. That mattered. The intensity of his gaze made Emma's heart quicken. For a moment, she thought he might say something more. Instead, he rose wearily to his feet. I should sit with him, in case he wakes. I can take turns with you, Emma offered. You need rest too. Cole looked like he might refuse, then nodded. Wake me in a few hours then, or sooner if there's any change. After he left, Emma sank into a chair, suddenly aware of her own exhaustion. The night's events had revealed a side of Cole she hadn't fully appreciated before. His unwavering courage, his devotion to his brother, the depth of his sense of responsibility. She found herself admiring him even more, and that realization brought both warmth and disquiet. The house settled into quiet, broken only by rain against windows and the occasional creak of old wood. Emma sat in the dim kitchen, watching shadows dance across walls, and allowed herself to wonder just for a moment what it might be like to have a man like Cole Bennett look at her not as an employee but as something more. Then she pushed the thought away, reminding herself of reality. She was the cook, nothing more. To imagine otherwise was to court heartbreak. But as she finally rose to check on Blake and relieve Cole from his vigil, Emma's hand strayed to the locket at her throat, her mother's last gift, and she allowed herself one small hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, in this wild and beautiful place, she might find something she'd never dared dream of. Home. The week following Blake's accident passed in a blur of anticipation and nerves. Emma found herself paying extra attention to her appearance each morning, pinching color into her cheeks, arranging her hair more carefully than usual. She caught Cole watching her more openly, now his gaze warm with admiration that made her blush like a schoolgirl. Blake, recovered enough to sit in the kitchen with his leg propped on a chair, noticed immediately. About time, he remarked one afternoon as Emma brought him fresh coffee. I was beginning to think you were both blind. Don't tease, Emma admonished, though she couldn't suppress a smile. It's just a social. Blake's expression turned serious. Mothing is just anything with my brother. He doesn't do things halfway. The day before the social, Mrs. Henderson approached Emma as she kneaded bread dough. Got something for you, she said, placing a box on the kitchen table. Been saving it for a special occasion. Inside the box lay a dress of deep blue fabric, simple but beautifully made with lace at the collar and cuffs. Emma gasped, running her fingers over the soft material. Mrs. Henderson, I couldn't possibly. Nonsense. My daughter sent it last Christmas, but it's too young a style for an old woman like me. The housekeeper's eyes twinkled. Besides, blue suits you better than me. Brings out those eyes of yours. Tears pricked at Emma's eyes. Thank you. It's beautiful. Mrs. Henderson patted her shoulder. You deserve a bit of happiness, girl. Both of you do. Saturday dawned clear and warm, a perfect late spring day. Emma spent the morning completing her usual tasks, then bathed and dressed with care. The blue dress fit as if made for her, the hem long enough to disguise the worst of her limp. She arranged her hair in a more elaborate style than usual, securing it with the tortoiseshell combs that had been her mother's. When she emerged from her room, Blake was sitting in the kitchen, his broken leg propped on a chair. He whistled appreciatively. If my brother wasn't already smitten, that dress would do the trick. Emma blushed. Is he ready? Blake grinned. Outside with the buggy and looking more nervous than I've seen him since his first cattle auction. Go easy on him. He's out of practice with courting. This isn't courting, Emma protested weakly. Blake's laugh followed her out the door. Tell yourself that, if it helps. Cole waited beside a polished buggy dressed in his Sunday best. Dark trousers, a crisp white shirt, and a vest that emphasized his broad shoulders. He'd trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair. As he turned to watch her approach, Emma felt her breath catch at how handsome he looked. His eyes widened as he took in her appearance, a look of appreciation warming his features. Miss Harrison, he said, his voice deeper than usual. You look beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. She smiled shyly. You look very handsome yourself. He offered his hand to help her into the buggy, his touch lingering as she settled onto the seat. The ride to town passed quickly, filled with easy conversation. Cole pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the early days of settlement. He seemed more relaxed than she'd ever seen him, laughing more freely, his usual reserve softened by the occasion. Silverton was transformed for the social. Bunting decorated the main street, and tables laden with food lined the area in front of the church. A makeshift dance floor had been constructed in the center of town, and a small band was already playing as couples swirled across the wooden planks. As Cole helped Emma down from the buggy, She felt a momentary pang of anxiety. Socializing had never been easy for her. Too many pitying glances, too many whispers behind hands. As if sensing her discomfort, Cole placed her hand firmly in the crook of his arm. "Shall we?" he asked, his steady gaze reassuring. With a grateful nod, she allowed him to lead her toward the gathering. People turned to look as they passed, curious about the newcomer on Cole Bennett's arm. Emma forced herself to walk as naturally as possible, though she knew her limp was more pronounced after the buggy ride. Cole introduced her proudly to everyone they met: the storekeeper who remembered her from her arrival, the banker and his wife, the blacksmith and his family. To her surprise, people seemed more interested in her connection to Cole than in her disability. Several women welcomed her warmly, asking about life at the ranch and expressing admiration for her taking on the cooking for so many men. "Cole hasn't brought anyone to a social in years," the banker's wife confided. "You must be very special indeed." As the evening progressed, Emma found herself enjoying the gathering more than she'd anticipated. The food was delicious, the company pleasant, and Cole remained attentively by her side. When the band began playing a waltz, however, she tensed. "Would you care to dance?" Cole asked, offering his hand. Emma shook her head. "I can't. My leg can support you just fine with the right partner," he finished for her. "Trust me." Before she could protest further, he led her onto the dance floor. Placing one hand at her waist and taking her other hand in his, he began to guide her in a simplified version of the waltz, supporting her weight when needed and adjusting his steps to accommodate her uneven gait. "See," he murmured as they moved slowly around the floor. "Not so difficult." Emma looked up at him in wonder. No one had ever asked her to dance before, let alone made it possible for her to do so. "How did you know we could?" "I didn't," he admitted, "but I wanted to try. Some things are worth the risk." The significance of his words wasn't lost on her. As they continued to dance, the rest of the gathering seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them moving together in the warm evening light. When the music ended, Cole didn't release her immediately. Instead, he gazed down at her with an intensity that made her heart race. Then a voice cut through the moment like a blade. "Cole Bennett, is that really you?" Cole stiffened, his grip on Emma tightening. A woman approached, late 20s, exquisitely dressed in a way that spoke of money and city refinement. Dark hair in an elaborate updo. Expensive gown that made Emma's borrowed dress look shabby by comparison. Confidence that came from knowing her place in the world. "Victoria," Cole said flatly, and Emma heard old pain in that single word. Victoria Sterling, the woman who had rejected his proposal 5 years ago. The wound Blake had warned her about. Victoria's gaze swept over Emma, lingering on her hand in Cole's arm, then dismissing her with the practiced ease of someone used to being the most important person in any room. "I've just returned to Silverton," Victoria said, her attention entirely on Cole. "Father's opening a new bank branch. Isn't it wonderful?" She touched Cole's arm with familiar intimacy. "We should catch up. It's been too long." Cole's voice was polite but cold. "Victoria, this is Miss Emma Harrison." "Emma." "Victoria Sterling." Emma extended her hand. Victoria's handshake was limp, dismissive, her eyes already turning back to Cole. "How quaint," she said, the word dripping with condescension. Cole always did have a soft spot for charity cases. Emma stiffened. Cole's jaw clenched. But Victoria was already turning away, threading her arm through Cole's free one. "You simply must tell me about the ranch. I hear you've expanded considerably." For the next 20 minutes, Victoria monopolized Cole, touching his arm, laughing at things that weren't funny, referencing shared memories with the casual cruelty of someone reminding everyone of their history. Emma excused herself and retreated to the food tables, watching from a distance. Other townsfolk watched too, whispers flowing like water around stones. Near the punch bowl, she overheard two older women talking. "Such a shame about that girl's leg," one said. "Cole's too kind for his own good, bringing her here." The other nodded. "Victoria's back, just in time it seems. She's realized what she gave up." Emma's heart sank. Old insecurities rose like floodwater. Of course Cole would prefer a whole woman like Victoria, beautiful, refined from his own world. Cole finally extracted himself and found Emma at the edge of the gathering. "I'm sorry about that," he said. "Victoria has a way of taking over spaces." Emma forced a smile. "It's fine, she's very beautiful." Cole frowned. "Emma, Victoria's voice carried across the crowd. Cole, come help me with this punch bowl. Emma saw the frustration in Cole's eyes. You should go, she said quietly. She seems to need you. Emma turned away before he could see the tears threatening. Cole caught her hand. Would you like to take a walk? It's a beautiful night. Emma hesitated but nodded. They strolled toward the edge of town where the noise receded and the vast expanse of star-strewn sky spread above them. Cole led her to a small bench beneath a cottonwood tree, helping her sit before taking his place beside her. For a moment, they sat in companionable silence, gazing at the stars. Then Cole turned to face her, his expression serious. I need to tell you something, Emma. The use of her first name sent a shiver through her. When you first came to Prairie Wind, I thought you were just going to be our cook. A good one, I hoped, but still just an employee. He paused, searching for words. But these past weeks getting to know you, seeing your strength, your kindness, your determination, you've become much more than that to me. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Please let me finish. I'm not good with words like Blake is. He took her hand in his. I find myself thinking about you when we're apart, looking forward to our conversations, admiring not just your beauty, though you are beautiful, but your mind, your spirit, your heart. He moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I know it's soon, maybe too soon, and I know you might not feel the same, but I needed you to know that I care for you, Emma, deeply. Joy and disbelief warred within her. I don't understand, she whispered. You could have any woman. Why would you choose someone broken like me? Pain flashed across Cole's face. Is that truly how you see yourself, as broken? It's how everyone sees me, she replied, tears threatening. The limping girl good enough to cook and clean, but not to love. Not everyone, he said firmly, not me. He cupped her cheek with his free arm. You walk with a limp, yes, but that doesn't define you any more than the scar on my back defines me. You have a scar. Ranch accident years ago. Does knowing that make me broken in your eyes? Of course not. Then why would your leg make you broken in mine? His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. The first time I saw you standing in the rain, chin up despite everything, I admired your courage. And every day since I've found more to admire. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You walk right into my heart, Emma Harrison. Limp and all. Before she could respond, his lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it brought fresh tears to her eyes. She found herself responding instinctively, her hand moving to his shoulder as the kiss deepened, becoming a promise of possibilities neither had dared hope for. When they finally parted, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, just for a chance, to court you properly, to show you that you deserve to be cherished exactly as you are. Emma's heart felt too full for words. Instead, she answered by initiating another kiss, pouring into it all the feelings she'd been afraid to acknowledge. Her admiration for his strength and integrity, her appreciation for his kindness, her growing love for the man who saw beyond her limitations to the woman beneath. Under the vast Colorado sky, with the distant sounds of the social mingling, with the whisper of leaves above them, Emma felt something long dormant within her bloom to life. Hope. The ride back to Prairie Wind was quiet, but charged with new awareness. Cole held the reins in one hand, his other arm around Emma, drawing her close against the evening chill. They spoke little, both processing the shift in their relationship, content for now to simply be together. At the ranch, lights still burned in the main house despite the late hour. As Cole helped Emma down from the buggy, Blake appeared on the porch, crutches thumping against the wooden boards. About time you two returned, he called, grinning. Was beginning to think you'd eloped. Cole shook his head at his brother's teasing, but his hand remained at Emma's waist, a public declaration of his intentions that wasn't lost on Blake. I see the evening was a success, Blake commented as they joined him on the porch. His smile held genuine happiness, though Emma thought she detected a hint of wistfulness in his eyes. After Blake retreated inside, Cole turned to Emma, taking both her hands in his. Thank you for tonight, he said softly. It meant more than I can say. For me as well, she replied. Cole leaned down to kiss her again, a gentle promise sealed under the star-filled sun. The following week passed in a state of joyful disbelief. Cole courted her with a thoroughness that both charmed and overwhelmed her. Wildflowers appeared on her kitchen table. Books from his personal library found their way to her room. He took her on picnics to his favorite spots on the ranch, always careful, always respectful, showing his growing affection through consistent, thoughtful care. Blake watched their blossoming relationship with evident approval, though as his recovery progressed and he regained his mobility, Emma sensed a restlessness in him. One evening as she helped him exercise his healing leg on the porch, he confided his thoughts. "I'm thinking of leaving Prairie Wind," he said abruptly. Emma's hand stilled. "Leaving, but why? This is your home." "It's Cole's home," Blake corrected gently. "It's always been his dream, not mine." He gazed out at the mountains painted gold by the setting sun. "That accident made me realize some things. I've been living in my brother's shadow, sometimes resenting it, but never brave enough to step out on my own." "Where would you go?" "California maybe, or Oregon, somewhere I can build something for myself." He smiled ruefully. "Besides, three is a crowd, especially when two are falling in love." "Cole would be devastated if you left," Emma said, knowing it was true. Despite their differences, the brothers shared a deep bond. "He has you now," Blake said. "He'll understand eventually." A few days later, as Emma and Blake sat on the porch discussing his California plans, the sound of hoofbeats drew their attention. An elegant carriage pulled up to the house, driven by a liveried coachman. The door opened, and Victoria Sterling stepped out dressed as if for a society ball rather than a ranch visit. "Good evening," she called brightly. "I hope I'm not intruding." Emma felt her stomach tighten. Blake's expression darkened. "Miss Sterling," Emma said, forcing politeness. "Mr. Bennett is checking the north pasture. He should return shortly." "Oh, I didn't come to see Cole," Victoria said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I came to call on you, Emma." "May I come in?" Emma had no choice but to invite her inside. Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway, her face set in disapproving lines, but she brought tea nonetheless. Victoria settled herself in the parlor as if she owned the place, smoothing her expensive skirts. "What a charming home," she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "So rustic." "It suits us," Emma replied carefully. "I'm sure it does." Victoria sipped her tea, studying Emma over the rim of her cup. "I wanted to apologize for the social. I fear I monopolized Cole's attention. Old friends, you know, we have so much history. There's no need to apologize." "You're very gracious." Victoria set down her cup. "I also wanted to be honest with you. Cole and we were very close once. Engaged, in fact." "I'm aware." "Are you?" Victoria's eyes glittered. "Did he tell you why I left?" Emma said nothing. "I was young and foolish. I thought I needed city life, society culture. But I've realized over these 5 years that what I need is Cole." Emma's hands clenched in her lap. "Mr. Bennett has made his feelings clear." "Has he?" Victoria leaned forward. "Or is he simply being kind? Cole has always had a generous heart. He takes in strays, you know. Injured animals, lost causes." The words struck like physical blows. Emma felt her face flush. "I think you should leave," she said quietly. Victoria stood, smoothing her skirts. "I'm not trying to be cruel, Emma. I'm trying to be honest. Cole needs a proper wife, someone who can stand beside him in society, host gatherings, represent Prairie Wind. Not someone who—" She let the sentence hang, her meaning clear. "Someone who limps," Emma finished, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was going to say someone who understands his world," Victoria said smoothly. "But yes, if we're being frank, there are practical considerations. Ranch life is demanding. A wife needs to be able to keep up." Emma's hands shook in her lap. Victoria moved to the door, then paused. "If you truly care for him, you'll let him go, before he realizes what a mistake this is and has to hurt you by ending it himself. Save you both the pain." After she left, Emma sat alone in the parlor, Victoria's words echoing in her mind like poison. Mrs. Henderson found her there an hour later, tears streaming down her face. "That manipulative snake," the housekeeper said furiously. "You don't believe us, do you?" Emma looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "But what if she's right? What if I am just a charity case? What if Cole's too kind to tell me the truth?" Mrs. Henderson gripped her hands firmly. "Listen to me, girl. I've known Cole Bennett since he was a boy. That man doesn't do anything out of pity. When he looks at you, he sees the woman he loves. I'd stake my life on it." But Victoria's words had found the cracks in Emma's armor, the places where old wounds never fully healed. That night, unable to sleep, she made a decision. She would leave, before Cole lost his ranch, before he had to choose, before she became the burden that ruined everything he'd built. By midnight, she had packed her meager belongings. She wrote a letter by lamplight, tears blotting the ink. You showed me more kindness than I ever hoped to find, but I can't stay. You deserve someone whole, someone who can stand proudly beside you without bringing shame. Forgive me. Always, Emma. She placed it on the kitchen table where he would find it. Before dawn, she dressed and gathered her bag. She would take the early stage to Denver, then the train to St. Louis. Back to her cousins who didn't want her. Back to being invisible. But it was better than watching Cole lose everything because of her. Emma opened her door quietly, trying not to wake anyone. The kitchen was dark. She crept toward the back door, bag in hand. Then a lamp flared to life. Cole sat at the kitchen table in the darkness, the lamp now illuminating his face. Pain and fury warred in his eyes. Going somewhere. His voice was rough. Emma froze, caught. Cole stood the chair, scraping loudly in the quiet. Were you going to leave without even saying goodbye? She couldn't meet his gaze. I left a letter. A letter. His voice shook with emotion. After everything, a letter. He crossed to her in two strides. What happened? What changed? Emma kept her eyes on the floor. Nothing changed. I just realized this can't work. That's a lie. His hands gripped her shoulders, not hard but firm. Tell me the truth, Emma. She broke. Victoria came yesterday. She said I was just a charity case, that you felt sorry for me, that I'd be an embarrassment to you. And she's right. The words tumbled out through tears. Look at me, Cole. I can't walk without limping. I can't dance except when you're supporting me. I can't ride. I can't do any of the things a rancher's wife should do. Cole's expression hardened. And you believed her. Emma's tears flowed freely now. She said things I already knew, things I've known my whole life. Cole grabbed her shoulders more firmly. Stop, just stop. His voice was fierce. Do you know what I see when I look at you? Emma shook her head, unable to speak. I see a woman who traveled 3 weeks alone to a strange place to make her own way. I see someone who gets up every morning before dawn and works harder than most men I know. I see intelligence, kindness, courage. His hands moved to frame her face. You think your leg is all I notice, Emma? I barely notice it. And when I do, I'm reminded of the strength it took to become who you are despite it. His voice dropped. I love you. Not despite your leg. Not in spite of it. I love all of you. Every part. Emma shook her head, but he continued. Victoria doesn't matter. What she thinks. What anyone thinks. The only thing that matters is what you think. Do you love me, Emma? Through her tears, Emma whispered, yes. God help me, yes. Cole's expression softened. Then that's all that matters. Everything else, Victoria, the gossips, anyone who has a problem with us, they can go to hell. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as she sobbed against his chest. Don't ever try to leave me again, he said into her hair. Promise me. I promise, Emma whispered. Cole tilted her face up, kissed her, deeply tasting salt from her tears. When they parted, both were breathless. I won't lose you, he said firmly. Not to Victoria's poison, not to your fears, not to anything. Morning light was beginning to creep through the windows. Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway, saw them, embraced, smiled knowingly, and retreated. Cole led Emma to the table, sat her down, poured coffee with hands that shook slightly from emotion. There's something else, he said. Something I need to tell you. Emma braced herself. Yesterday, before Victoria came, I had a visitor, Mr. Sterling, Victoria's father. Cole's jaw tightened. He's the banker who holds my ranch loan, $3,000 due at the end of October. Emma's heart sank. That's 6 months away. Was. He's changed the terms. Says he's reconsidering, given market instability. Cole's eyes met hers. He's calling the loan. I have 30 days to pay in full or he forecloses. The pieces fell into place. Because of us. Because you chose me over Victoria. This started before that, Cole said. But yes, I think that accelerated things. Emma stood, agitation making her forget her leg for a moment. She stumbled. Cole caught her, steadied her. What will you do? I don't know yet. He looked at her intently. But whatever happens, we face it together. Understood. Emma wanted to argue to insist she should leave to solve this, but she'd promised. And more than that, she believed him. They would face it together. The next days were a blur of desperate planning. Cole met with the lawyer in town, a Mr. Harrison who'd known his father. The legal reality was grim. Sterling had legitimate grounds. A missed payment, the previous February, 2 weeks late, gave him the right to accelerate the loan under the contract's fine print. Cole's options were limited. Pay $3,000 in 30 days impossible without selling cattle at spring prices. Sell part of the ranch, which defeated the purpose of saving it. Find an investor, which meant losing control. Or marry Victoria and have Sterling forgive the debt. That last option hung unspoken in the air. Emma watched Cole struggle with it, saw the weight pressing down on him. 9 years of work, his father's legacy, everything he'd built threatened. One evening she found the courage to say what she'd been thinking. Cole, if marrying Victoria would save the ranch. His eyes blazed. Don't even suggest it. But your legacy. You are my legacy, he said fiercely. The ranch is just land. You're my future. Blake, who'd been listening from the doorway, limped in on his cane. There's something I need to say. Both turned to him. Cole, you've spent 9 years keeping this ranch for me. But did you ever ask what I wanted? Cole's expression hardened. This is family. No, Blake interrupted. This is your family. Your dream, not mine. He took a breath. I want to go to California, start a horse breeding operation, build something that's mine, not inherited. The revelation hung in the air. I've been selfish, Blake continued, letting you sacrifice for something I don't even want. But watching you with Emma, I realized something. The ranch is just property. Family is people. He looked between them. Emma is your real family now, Cole. Fight for her. Let the ranch go if you have to. We'll build something new together. Cole stared at his brother, emotions warring across his face. Then Blake added quietly, besides, I have $800 saved for California. It's yours. Mrs. Henderson appeared. I have $200, my retirement fund. But family matters more. Over the next days, more help came. Peterson and the ranch hands pooled $300. The minister took a collection in town. People remembered Cole's father's kindness, wanted to help the son. By the deadline's eve, they had $2,800, still $200 short. Emma sat in her room, staring at her mother's jewelry box. Inside, a gold locket. Pearl earrings. Not much, but all she had left of her parents. She didn't hesitate. The next morning, she went to town and pawned them. The jeweler gave her exactly $200. When she returned, Cole was in the barn. She found him there, held out the money. Emma, no. This is our future, she said firmly. Our family. Memories live in hearts, not things. Cole pulled her into his arms, buried his face in her hair. I don't deserve you. Yes, she whispered. You do. They rode to Silverton together. Cole, Emma, and Blake carrying $3,000 in cash. They entered Sterling's bank with heads high. Sterling sat behind his massive desk, Victoria beside him, like a queen on a throne. $3,000, Cole said, placing the money on the desk. Full payment. Sterling's eyes glittered coldly. The contract specified payment 2 weeks ago. You're in default. Cole's voice was hard. The law says there's a 24-hour grace period for debt payment. Not for this type of contract. Sterling smiled cruelly. I'll see you at court tomorrow, Bennett. Bring your deed. You were but signing it over. He walked out, Victoria following with a triumphant smile. Emma stood frozen, staring at the papers Sterling had left behind. The original contract. She picked it up, began reading carefully, her seamstress-trained eyes noting every detail. Then her eyes widened. Cole, she said urgently, look at this. She pointed to a clause buried in the dense legal language. Cole leaned in, reading where she indicated. His expression shifted from defeat to hope. Blake moved closer. What is it? Emma's finger traced the words. Section 7, paragraph 3. In the event of dispute regarding payment terms, the debtor may render payment to the county clerk as neutral party, fulfilling contractual obligations regardless of creditor acceptance. Cole straightened, a slow smile spreading across his face. Sterling refused our payment. That's a dispute. And we have witnesses, Blake added. Everyone in that bank just saw him turn down $3,000. For the first time in weeks, Cole laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face. He swept Emma into his arms, spun her around despite her startled yelp. "You brilliant woman," he said, setting her down and kissing her soundly. "You just saved everything." The next day they would go to court. They would present their case, and they would fight, together. But for now, riding back to Prairie Wind in the late afternoon sun, $3,000 still in their possession, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could win. Cole's hand found hers squeezed gently. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "I want you to know something." "What?" "I'm going to marry you. Ranch or no ranch, money or no money. Nothing will stop that." Emma's heart swelled. "Is that a proposal, Mr. Bennett?" "Not yet," he said with a smile. "When I propose properly, you'll know it." As they crested the ridge overlooking Prairie Wind, the ranch spread below them in golden evening light, Emma felt something settle deep in her chest. This was home. Not just the land, but the people. The love. And she would fight for it with everything she had. The Silverton Courthouse stood at the end of Main Street, a two-story structure of stone and timber that represented law and order in a town barely 10 years old. By 9 in the morning, the courtroom was packed. Word had spread fast. Cole Bennett, whose father had been one of the first settlers, was fighting to keep his ranch from the banker who tried to force his hand through his daughter. Emma sat in the front row between Blake and Mrs. Henderson, her hands clenched tight in her lap. She'd barely slept, going over and over the contract language, praying she'd read it correctly. Cole sat at the defendant's table, his back straight, jaw set. He wore his best suit, the one he'd been married in when his parents wed passed down and altered. He looked every inch the rancher his father had raised him to be. At the plaintiff's table, Sterling and his lawyer from Denver sat with the confidence of men who believed they'd already won. Victoria sat behind them, her face carefully neutral. Judge Morrison entered, a man of 65 with iron gray hair and eyes that had seen every trick in the book. "All rise," the bailiff called. The hearing began. Sterling's lawyer was smooth, presenting the case with practiced ease. The contract was clear. Payment was due October 31st. Cole had missed a payment in February of the previous year, albeit by only 2 weeks. That late payment gave Sterling the right to accelerate the loan. Cole had defaulted. The law was on their side. The lawyer produced documents carefully organized, each one damning. The original contract, the payment records showing the February delay, the notice of acceleration sent 30 days prior. "Your Honor," the lawyer concluded, "this is a simple matter of contract law. Mr. Bennett borrowed money. He agreed to terms. He failed to meet those terms. Mr. Sterling has every right to foreclose." Judge Morrison looked at Cole. "Mr. Bennett, you're representing yourself." "Yes, Your Honor." Cole stood. Can't afford a lawyer after scraping together $3,000. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The judge's eyebrow raised. "You have the money." "In full. Tried to pay Mr. Sterling yesterday. He refused it." Sterling's lawyer jumped up. "Because payment was overdue, the deadline had passed." "By whose determination?" Cole asked, his voice calm but firm. "The contract states payment is due end of October. Yesterday was October 29th. Last I checked, October has 31 days. The lawyer's face reddened. The acceleration notice clearly stated payment was due immediately upon receipt, which was 30 days ago. Judge Morrison held up a hand. "Let me see the contract." The bailiff brought it forward. The judge read in silence, the courtroom holding its breath. After several minutes, he looked up. "Mr. Sterling, did the defendant attempt to pay you yesterday?" Sterling had to answer under oath. "He did." "The full amount owed on?" "Yes, but—" "And you refused this payment?" "The deadline had passed according to my notice of acceleration." The judge's expression hardened. "According to the original contract, payment is due October 31st. Your acceleration notice cannot supersede the original contract terms without the debtor's agreement to new terms. Mr. Bennett never agreed to new terms." Sterling's lawyer stood quickly. "Your Honor, the acceleration clause gives my client the right to demand immediate payment if—" "I can read, counselor." The judge's tone was sharp. "What I'm asking is whether Mr. Bennett was given reasonable opportunity to meet the original contract terms before foreclosure proceedings began." Before the lawyer could respond, Emma stood. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear, despite her racing heart. "May I speak?" The judge looked surprised. "Young lady, this is not—" "I'm literate, Your Honor. I read this contract carefully." She moved forward, her limp pronounced in the silent courtroom, but her chin high. "May I approach?" Judge Morrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Approach." Emma took the contract, with trembling hands found the section she'd marked. Section 7, paragraph 3. It states in event of dispute regarding payment terms, the debtor may render payment to the county clerk as neutral party, thereby fulfilling contractual obligations regardless of creditor acceptance or refusal. The judge leaned forward, reading where she pointed. Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. "Mr. Sterling refused our payment yesterday. $3,000. In front of witnesses. That's a dispute. The contract provides remedy. We can pay the county clerk, satisfy our debt, and Mr. Sterling's refusal becomes irrelevant." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel for order. Sterling's lawyer was on his feet. "That clause pertains to disputes over the amount owed, not timing." Emma had prepared for this. She pulled a small book from her bag, a law text the minister had found for her. Colorado territorial law, revised 1872, states that any creditor refusing payment tendered in good faith forfeits right to claim default due to timing. We offered good faith payment, $3,000, the full amount. Mr. Sterling refused it. Under territorial law, that refusal means we're not in default. Judge Morrison took the law book, read the passage she'd marked. His expression shifted from skepticism to interest. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said slowly, "is it true you refused payment of the full amount yesterday?" Sterling, realizing the trap, hesitated. The timing was wrong. They were trying to avoid. "Answer the question. Did you refuse $3,000 when it was offered?" "Yes, but—" "And was this the full amount owed?" "Yes." The judge sat back. "Interesting." Sterling's lawyer tried to recover. "Your Honor, my client had every right to refuse late payment. The acceleration notice was sent when—" The judge interrupted. The lawyer shuffled papers. "September 29th. Giving Mr. Bennett 30 days to pay, which would make the deadline October 29th, which was yesterday, when payment was attempted." The judge looked at Sterling. "It seems to me, Mr. Sterling, that you refused payment on the very day your own notice said it was due." The lawyer started to object, but the judge held up his hand. "I'm not finished." He turned to the courtroom. "Is there anyone here who witnessed Mr. Sterling refusing payment yesterday?" Several hands went up. Bank employees who'd been present, townspeople who'd seen the confrontation. The judge nodded. "It appears we have ample evidence of refusal." He looked directly at Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, I'm going to ask you a question, and I remind you that you're under oath. Did you refuse this payment in good faith because you believed the deadline had truly passed, or did you refuse it for another reason?" Sterling's face went pale. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Before Sterling could answer, a voice came from behind him. "He did it for me." Victoria stood, her face pale but resolute. "Your Honor, may I testify?" The courtroom fell silent. Sterling grabbed her arm, but she pulled away. "Miss Sterling," the judge said slowly, "you wish to give testimony?" "I do." "Approach the witness stand." Victoria walked forward, her expensive dress rustling. She was sworn in, sat down, and folded her hands in her lap. The judge looked at her. "You have something to say about this matter?" Victoria took a breath. "My father refused the payment because I asked him to." The courtroom erupted again. The judge banged his gavel. "Explain," he said. "5 years ago, I was engaged to Cole Bennett. I broke it off because I wanted city life, society things I thought I couldn't have here." Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "When I came back to Silverton and saw Cole with Emma, I realized I'd made a mistake. Not about leaving, but about thinking I could come back and pick up where we'd left off." She looked at her father. "I asked Father to use the loan to force Cole's hand, make him choose between the ranch and Emma. I thought if he lost the ranch because of her, he'd resent her. Or if he chose the ranch, I could comfort him." Sterling looked stricken. "Victoria, don't—" "I won't lie under oath, Father." She turned back to the judge. "My father loves me. He did what I asked. But it was wrong. Emma Harrison had nothing to do with any of this except being kind and making Cole happy. And I used my father's business to try to destroy that. She stood. Judge Morrison, everything the defense said is true. We refused good faith payment. We tried to manipulate the situation. And Cole Bennett doesn't deserve to lose his ranch because I couldn't accept that he'd moved on. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. The judge studied Victoria for a long moment. That took courage, Miss Sterling. She smiled sadly. Not really, just honesty, something I should have practiced more of 5 years ago. Judge Morrison looked at Sterling. Mr. Sterling, do you have anything to add to your daughter's testimony? Sterling seemed to have aged 10 years. No, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Then I'm ready to rule. He picked up his gavel. First, regarding the contract interpretation. Miss Harrison is correct. Section 7, paragraph 3 provides clear remedy when a creditor refuses payment. Additionally, Colorado territorial law supports her interpretation. He looked at Sterling with disappointment. Second, regarding Mr. Sterling's conduct. Refusing payment in good faith, then claiming default is bad faith dealing. Your daughter's testimony confirms ulterior motive. The gavel came down. I hereby rule as follows. Cole Bennett may submit payment of $3,000 to the county clerk within 24 hours. Upon receipt, the debt shall be considered satisfied in full. The foreclosure action is dismissed. Another bang of the gavel. Furthermore, Mr. Sterling, I'm ordering a review of all your recent foreclosure actions. If I find a pattern of bad faith dealing, there will be consequences. One final bang. This court is adjourned. The courtroom exploded in sound. Cole stood frozen for a moment, then turned to Emma. She was already moving toward him, her limp forgotten in the rush of emotion. He caught her in his arms, lifted her off her feet, buried his face in her hair. You did it, he said, his voice thick. You saved everything. We did it, she corrected. Together. Blake appeared, pounding Cole's back. That was the damnedest thing I've ever seen. Mrs. Henderson was crying openly, dabbing her eyes with her apron. As the crowd surged around them with congratulations, Emma saw Victoria standing alone by the witness stand. Their eyes met. Victoria gave a small nod, acknowledgement, and apology both. Emma nodded back. No words were needed. Outside the courthouse, the minister was waiting. Reverend Thomas, a man of 50, with kind eyes and a gentle manner. Congratulations on your victory, he said to Cole. Then he smiled. Now I believe you have other business with me. Cole looked down at Emma. I told you when I proposed properly you'd know it. He dropped to one knee right there on the courthouse steps in front of half the town. Emma Harrison, I don't have a ring yet. I don't have any guarantee except my word. But I love you with everything I am. Will you marry me today? Right now. Emma's tears flowed freely. Yes, God, yes. The Reverend halved. Well, then let's not waste time. I can perform the ceremony right here if you'd like. Here, Emma looked around at the crowd gathering. Cole stood, framed her face with his hands. Here, now, in front of everyone. So there's no doubt, no question. You're mine and I'm yours. And so they were married on the courthouse steps in Silverton, Colorado on October 30th, 1875. Blake stood as best man. Mrs. Henderson held wildflowers someone had grabbed from a nearby garden. The banker's wife cried. The shopkeeper beamed. Even some of Sterling's bank employees smiled. The vows were simple, heartfelt. When Reverend Thomas said, "You may kiss your bride," Cole did so thoroughly enough to make Emma blush and the crowd cheer. As husband and wife, they rode back to Prairie Wind in the buggy, the sun setting golden over the mountains, their future stretching before them like the valley below. That night in the small cabin Cole had built for them weeks ago in anticipation of this moment, Emma felt her last fears fall away. Cole was gentle, patient, treating her as if she were precious beyond measure. He traced the line of her leg with his fingers, kissed the twisted ankle, loved every part of her without reservation. You're beautiful, he whispered against her skin. Every inch of you. Emma, who had never felt beautiful in her life, believed him. Afterward, they lay entwined beneath quilts against the autumn chill, talking quietly of dreams and plans. I want children. Cole set his hand resting on her flat stomach. Lots of them. Emma's heart clenched with fear as she tried to hide. What if I can't? What if my leg? Then we'll adopt. Or we'll be happy with just us. He kissed her forehead. I just want you. Everything else is extra. 2 weeks later, Blake departed for California. He'd healed well, walked with barely a limp now. His bags were packed, his horse saddled. The goodbye was harder than either brother expected. You sure about this? Cole asked for the 10th time. Never been more sure. Blake clasped Cole's shoulder. You gave me a home when I needed it. Stability, a foundation. Now I need to build my own. He turned to Emma, pulled her into a hug. Take care of him. He's happier than I've ever seen him, and that's because of you. You take care of yourself, Emma said. Write often. And visit, Cole added. Family doesn't end because of distance. Blake pulled an envelope from his pocket, pressed it into Cole's hand. $500. What's left of my California fund. Start a college account for my future niece or nephew. Cole's throat worked. Blake, no arguments. Blake grinned, but his eyes were wet. Besides, I've already got clients lined up in Sacramento. Sent letters ahead. I'll be rich before you know it. The brothers embraced long and hard the way men do when words fail. Then Blake mounted his horse, tipped his hat to Mrs. Henderson and the assembled ranch hands and rode toward the mountains, toward his future. Cole stood with his arm around Emma, watching until Blake disappeared from view. He'll be all right, Emma said softly. I know. Cole pulled her closer. We all will be. Fall turned to winter. The first snow came early, blanketing prairie wind in white. Cole and Emma settled into married life with surprising ease. Their days were filled with ranch work, their evenings with quiet companionship and passionate embraces. Emma continued cooking for the hands, but she also began teaching. The minister's wife had made good on her offer. Twice a week, Emma tutored children from town in reading and writing. She discovered a fulfillment she'd always longed for. Cole watched her with pride, seeing her bloom into the woman she was always meant to be. Winter deepened. Letters came from Blake. He'd arrived safely in California. Met a woman named Sarah who trained horses. Started a small operation with 12 horses. He sounds happy, Emma said, reading the latest letter aloud to Cole by the fire. He is. Cole pulled her closer. And so am I. Spring returned, bringing wildflowers and renewal. And with it, Emma discovered she was with child. She'd suspected for a few weeks, but hadn't been certain until the doctor confirmed it. Dr. Foster, a man in his 50s who'd delivered half the babies in the county, examined her carefully. You're about 2 months along, Mrs. Bennett, he said. Conception likely happened in February. Emma's hand went to her still flat stomach. Joy and terror warred within her. Dr. Foster's expression grew serious. I need to be frank with you. Your leg, the way your hip developed to compensate it, could cause complications during childbirth. The pelvic structure isn't optimal for delivery. Emma's throat went dry. What kind of complications? In the worst case, we might lose the baby, or, he paused, or we might lose you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. What should I do? Emita whispered. Come see me monthly. We'll monitor closely. And when your time comes, I'll be there. Mrs. Hoffman, the midwife, is very experienced. Between us, we've handled difficult births before. He patted her hand. Don't give up hope, Mrs. Bennett. Many women with conditions worse than yours have delivered healthy babies. Emma told Cole that evening. She'd debated keeping it secret, not wanting to worry him, but they'd promised honesty. His reaction was everything she'd feared and hoped for. Shock. Then joy so pure it made her cry. Then fear that matched her own. The doctor said complications are possible, she told him, because of my leg. Cole's face went pale. What kind of complications? She told him everything Dr. Foster had said. Watch the color drain further from his face. We'll see the doctor monthly, Cole said, finally, his voice tight. Follow every instruction, and when the time comes, he pulled her into his arms, held her so tight she could barely breathe. We'll get through this, he said fiercely, together. As Emma's pregnancy progressed, Cole's protectiveness intensified. He hired a young woman from town, Mary, to help with the cooking. He insisted Emma rest more, work less. Emma protested. I'm pregnant, not dying. I know, Cole said, but humor me. The summer passed. Emma's belly grew round. The baby kicked strong, making her laugh with delight and wince with discomfort in equal measure. Cole would spend evenings with his hand on her stomach, feeling their child move, wonder in his eyes. But as her body changed, her limp grew more pronounced. The extra weight, the shifted center of gravity, made walking more difficult. Old insecurities crept back in. One evening in late summer, Emma struggled to put on her shoes. Swollen feet and an inability to bend properly frustrated her to tears. "I'm so useless," she said, throwing the shoe across the room. Cole retrieved it, knelt before her, gently lifted her foot, slid the shoe on, laced it with care. "You're growing our child," he said, his hands resting on her belly. "That's far from useless. I can't even dress myself. So I'll dress you. Emma, I don't care if you can't put on shoes. I care that you're healthy, that our baby's healthy. Everything else is just details." That night, Emma felt the baby move stronger than ever, a reminder of the life they'd created together, the future they were building. A letter arrived from Blake in September. He was engaged to Sarah, the horse trainer. They were building a successful operation, had 30 horses now. He'd be coming to visit when the baby was born. "I can't wait to be an uncle," he wrote. "Tell Cole I'm proud of him. And tell Emma I'm grateful she saw in my brother what the rest of us knew was there all along." Autumn returned, painting the mountains in gold and crimson. 1 year since Cole and Emma had married on the courthouse steps. And then on the first snowfall of the season, Emma's water broke. She was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she felt the gush of warmth. For a moment she stood frozen. Then the first contraction hit, stealing her breath. "Cole," she called, trying to keep the panic from her voice. He appeared immediately, took one look at her, and his face went pale. "It's time," she said. Cole's controlled panic would have been funny under other circumstances. He helped her to their bedroom, shouted for someone to fetch the doctor, and midwife paced like a caged animal. Dr. Foster arrived within an hour, Mrs. Hoffman shortly after. Both took one look at Emma and prepared for a long night. They weren't wrong. 20 hours into labor, Emma was exhausted beyond anything she'd imagined possible. The pain came in waves that left her gasping. Mrs. Hoffman coached her through breathing. Dr. Foster monitored the baby's heartbeat. But Emma's hip, her pelvic structure, fought against the natural process. The baby couldn't descend properly. Cole paced the hallway outside, forbidden from entering. The old custom said birth was women's work. But he could hear Emma's cries through the door, and each one felt like a knife to his heart. Peterson sat with him, silent companionship from the old ranch hand who'd seen births before. "Waiting's the hardest part of being a man, boss," he said quietly. At hour 18, Dr. Foster emerged. His face was grave. "Mr. Bennett, your wife is exhausted. The baby's in distress. We may have to make a choice." Cole felt the world tilt. "What kind of choice?" "I may only be able to save one of them." The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "I need your decision now. Who do I try to save if it comes to that?" Cole didn't hesitate. "Emma, save my wife." "Are you certain the child—" "Save Emma." His voice broke. "That's final. I can't lose her." "I won't." Dr. Foster nodded and returned to the room. Cole sank against the wall, buried his face in his hands. Peterson gripped his shoulder but said nothing. Inside the bedroom, Dr. Foster told Emma the situation, told her Cole's decision. Emma's response was immediate. "No, save the baby." Mrs. Hoffman and Dr. Foster exchanged glances. "Mrs. Bennett," the doctor said gently, "your husband doesn't get to make this choice." Emma's voice was weak but determined. "I didn't survive 22 years of being told I was broken just to give up now. I didn't walk across 3 states, marry the man I love, and carry this baby for 8 months to quit at the finish line." She gripped Mrs. Hoffman's hand with surprising strength. "One more try. I won't give up." Hoffman, who'd delivered babies for 30 years, saw something in Emma's eyes. The same steel that had carried her through everything life had thrown at her. "All right, girl," the midwife said. "One more try, but you have to push like your life depends on it." "Because it does." Emma closed her eyes, thought of her parents gone but not forgotten. Her mother who'd called the late God's punishment but had still loved her. Her father who'd taught her to read despite believing she'd never amount to anything. She thought of Cole, his gentle hands, his fierce love, the way he'd look past her leg to see her heart. She thought of Blake riding toward his dreams, of Mrs. Henderson's kindness, of a town that had learned to accept her. And she thought of the child inside her, the future, the legacy, the next generation of Bennetts who would grow up on this land. All right, she said, opening her eyes. Let's do this. Mrs. Hoffman positioned her. Dr. Foster prepared, and Emma pushed. She pushed with every ounce of strength she had left, pushed through pain that made her scream, pushed until the world narrowed to nothing but the need to bring this child into the world. And then impossibly miraculously, she heard it. A baby's cry. A boy. Dr. Foster announced, his voice breaking with emotion. A healthy boy. Emma collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Hoffman quickly cut the cord, cleaned the baby, and moments later placed him in Emma's arms. He was perfect, tiny and red and wailing with indignation at being forced from his warm nest. Dark hair like coals, and when he opened his eyes, they were the same startling blue. Hello, little one, Emma whispered through tears. I'm your mother. Dr. Foster opened the door. Mr. Bennett, you can come in now. Cole burst through like a man possessed. His eyes went immediately to Emma, checking that she was alive whole here. Then they dropped to the bundle in her arms. He approached slowly as if in a dream, knelt beside the bed, looked down at his son for the first time. He's perfect, Emma said softly. We have a son, Cole. Cole couldn't speak. Tears ran freely down his face. He reached out with one trembling finger, touched the baby's tiny hand. Immediately, little fingers wrapped around his grip, surprisingly strong. James Blake Bennett, Cole managed finally, after my father and my brother. Emma smiled. Perfect. Cole leaned down, kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You did it. You incredible, stubborn, brave woman. You did it. We did it, she corrected, together. Foster, packing up his instruments, shook his head in wonder. In 30 years of medicine, I've never seen anything quite like that. You should have been impossible, Mrs. Bennett, but you decided otherwise. Emma looked down at James, who had stopped crying and was staring up at her with unfocused eyes. Nothing about love is impossible, Doctor. I learned that from my husband. The next weeks passed in the beautiful exhaustion of new parenthood. James was a good baby, crying only when hungry or wet. Emma healed faster than expected. Cole was a besotted father, spending every spare moment staring at his son in wonder. Letters came from Blake. He and Sarah were married. He was coming to visit in the spring to meet his nephew. Can't wait to teach him to ride, he wrote. Tell Cole he did good, real good. Winter settled in again, but this winter felt different. The cabin rang with baby sounds, laughter, hope. One evening as snow fell soft outside their window, Cole sat with Emma before the fire. James slept in a cradle Cole had built with his own hands, the wood polished smooth as silk. What are you thinking? Emma asked, leaning against her husband's shoulder. About how 5 years ago I thought my life was over, Cole said. Victoria had left. Blake was wild and reckless. The ranch was all I had, and it felt like a burden instead of a blessing. He looked down at her. Then you showed up, stubborn woman in the rain who refused to be defined by what everyone said she couldn't do. I wasn't stubborn, Emma protested. I was desperate. You were brave. He kissed her hair. And you changed everything. Made me see that a ranch is just land. Family is what matters. Love is what lasts. Emma reached up, touched his cheek. I love you, Cole Bennett. I love you, Emma Bennett. He paused. Thank you. For what? For walking right into my heart. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire dance, listening to their son's soft breathing. Outside, snow covered the mountains. Spring would come again, as it always did. But for now, this moment was enough. This was everything. 5 years passed like water over stones, shaping and smoothing, but never destroying. Spring of 1881 arrived with the usual Colorado drama. Snow one day, sunshine the next. The aspens began their slow transformation from bare branches to green buds. Cole Bennett, now 37, stood on the porch of the expanded cabin, watching his son teach a younger child to ride. James, 5 years old, sat confidently on a small pony, his dark hair falling into blue eyes that were pure Bennett. Beside the pony, a little girl with her mother's green eyes clapped her hands in delight. Steady now, Jamie, Cole called. Horse can feel your confidence. The words were the same his father had used with him decades ago on this same land. The circle continuing, generation to generation. Emma emerged onto the porch, wiping flour from her hands. At 27, motherhood had softened some of her sharp edges, but none of her strength. Her hand unconsciously went to her swollen belly, 6 months pregnant with their third child. He's good with her, she said, watching James help 3-year-old Rose onto the pony in front of him. He's patient, gets that from you. Cole pulled Emma close to his hand, joining hers on her stomach. How are you feeling? Fat, ungainly, beautiful. She smiled up at him, the usual. This pregnancy, Dr. Foster said her body remembered what to do, but Cole still worried, would always worry. It was his nature. A wagon appeared on the ridge, moving fast. As it drew closer, Cole recognized the passengers and grinned. Blake Bennett jumped down before the wagon fully stopped, followed by a pretty woman with capable hands and kind eyes. Behind them, 2 children tumbled out, a boy of 4 and a girl of 2. "Uncle Blake!" James shouted, scrambling off the pony and running full tilt toward his uncle. Blake caught him, swung him around. "Look at you, nearly as tall as me." "That's not saying much," Cole said, coming down from the porch to embrace his brother. They clasped each other hard the way they always did. 5 years of separation hadn't changed the bond. Sarah hugged Emma carefully, mindful of her belly. "You look wonderful." "You lie beautifully," Emma laughed, "but I appreciate it." The children mixed immediately, the way children do. Blake's son Thomas and James ran off to explore. The 2 girls, close in age, followed at a more sedate pace. Inside, over coffee and fresh pie, Blake regaled them with stories of California. The ranch was thriving. 40 horses now, with buyers from as far as San Francisco. Sarah had developed a training method that was becoming famous. "We're doing well," Blake said, his hand finding Sarah's. "Real well." "Proud of you," Cole said simply. Blake's eyes grew bright. "Means a lot coming from you." Later, as the women prepared supper and the children played, Cole and Blake walked the ranch. "Place looks good," Blake observed. "Better than when I left." Emma's influence. Cole pointed to the expanded house, the new barn, the improved corrals. She had ideas. Good ones. They stopped at the ridge where Cole used to stand alone, staring at mountains and wondering about his future. Now he stood with his brother, surrounded by the sounds of family. "Remember when you used to come up here and brood?" Blake asked. Cole snorted. "I didn't brood." "You absolutely brooded." Blake grinned, dark and moody, shouldering the weight of the world. "Someone had to." "Yeah, but Emma taught you it didn't have to be alone." Blake's expression turned serious. "I owe her for that. For making you see that carrying burdens together is better than carrying them alone." An unexpected visitor arrived before supper. A fine carriage pulled up, and Victoria Sterling stepped out. She was Victoria Montgomery, now married to the shopkeeper's eldest son. Her dress was simpler than it used to be, her manner gentler. Emma met her at the door with grace that would have been impossible 5 years ago. "Victoria, please come in." "I won't stay," Victoria said. "I just wanted to bring something." She held out a package wrapped in brown paper. "For the baby, when it comes." Emma unwrapped it to find a beautiful knitted blanket, the work of many hours. "I made it myself," Victoria said. "I'm not very good yet, but Sarah, the banker's wife, has been teaching me." "It's beautiful." Emma meant it. Victoria's eyes were bright. "I wanted to apologize. Again, for everything I did. The manipulation, the cruelty." "We've moved past it," Emma said gently. "You don't need to keep apologizing." "I know, but I need to keep saying it until I believe I've earned forgiveness." Victoria glanced past Emma to where Cole stood in the doorway holding Rose. "He's happy. You both are, I can see it." "We are." "Good." Victoria smiled, genuine warmth in it. "That's all I wanted to know. That the harm I tried to do didn't stick." She turned to leave, then paused. "Emma, thank you for showing me that happiness isn't about what you have. It's about who you love." After she left, Cole came to stand beside Emma. "That was unexpected." "People change," Emma said, folding the blanket carefully. "We did. Why shouldn't she?" Supper that evening was chaos and laughter. 2 families crowded around the table, children squirming, food passed hand to hand, stories flowing like wine. James tugged on Cole's sleeve. "Papa, tell the story about how you met Mama." Cole looked at Emma, who nodded. This had become a tradition, the story of their meeting. "Well, son," Cole began, settling back in his chair. "It was April of '75. A storm was coming to Silverton. I was there buying supplies when I saw a woman standing in the rain." Emma took up the story. And I saw a man who looked past what I couldn't do to what I could. James leaned forward, even though he'd heard this 100 times. Did you love each other right away? Cole and Emma exchanged a look full of history. No, Cole said. Love grew. Like good crops, it needed time and care. But once it took root, nothing could shake it. Later, after the children were asleep and Blake and Sarah had retired to the guest room, Cole and Emma sat on the porch. The same place they'd sat so many times before. The place where their story had really begun. Do you ever regret it? Emma asked softly, choosing me over the easier path. Cole pulled her closer. Not once. You gave me what the ranch never could. Real purpose. He pointed to the house where children slept safe and warm. That's legacy. Not land, not money. Family. Emma rested her head on his shoulder. Your father would be proud. I hope so. Cole's voice was quiet. But more important, I'm proud. Of us. Of what we built. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined. The stars wheeled overhead. The mountains stood eternal. And in the house behind them, the future slept peacefully. 3 months later, Emma delivered another son. The birth was easier this time, her body knowing the way. They named him Quinn after Cole's father. Blake and Sarah stayed for a month helping with the new baby and the other children. When they finally left for California, it was with promises to visit every year. Family doesn't end because of distance, Blake said, echoing Cole's words from 5 years before. The years continued their march. James grew tall and serious, showing early signs of his father's quiet strength. Rose was pure sunshine, making everyone smile. Quinn was curious about everything, taking apart anything he could reach. Emma taught school 3 days a week now, a proper school building that the town had built with Cole's financial help. Her students adored her, never seeing her limp, only her passion for learning. Cole expanded the ranch not because he needed more, but because he could. Because he had sons to leave it to. Daughters who might want pieces of their own, a legacy to pass down. But the ranch was just land. He learned that. The real legacy was around his dinner table every night, was in the laughter of his children, was in the way Emma's eyes still lit up when he walked into a room, was in the stories he told his children about courage and love and looking past limitations to see hearts. One evening, many years after that rainy day in Silverton, Cole found Emma in the kitchen of their now much larger house. She was teaching Rose to make pie crust flour, dusting both their faces. He stood in the doorway watching, remembering the first time he'd seen her in a kitchen, nervous and determined. Now she moved with confidence, secure in her place and her value and her love. Emma looked up, it caught him, watching smiled the smile reserved just for him. What are you thinking? She asked. Cole crossed to her, pulled her into his arms despite Rose's giggling protest. About how people said no one would want the woman who limped. Emma's eyes grew soft. And a cowboy saw different. He touched her face. He saw her heart. Emma rose on her toes, kissed him, and she walked right into his. Rose made exaggerated gagging sounds. Gross papa, you're getting flour everywhere? They laughed, broke apart, returned to the simple joy of making pie with their daughter. But that night when the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Cole pulled out the journal he'd kept since his father died. The one where he recorded the important things. Births and deaths, hard winters and good harvests, decisions made and lessons learned. He wrote one final entry, April 1875 to April 1890. 15 years since Emma walked into my life. We've built something here. Not just a ranch, though prairie wind thrives. Not just a family, though our children are our greatest joy. We've built proof that love sees past all limitations. That strength comes in many forms. That the best legacy isn't what you leave behind in property, but what you leave behind in people. My father built this ranch from wilderness. I've built a family from love. And my children will build their own futures from the foundation we've given them. This is what it means to be a man. Not to shoulder burdens alone, not to measure worth in acres or cattle, but to love fiercely, choose wisely, and build something that lasts beyond yourself. Emma taught me that. The limping girl no one wanted became the woman who saved me, saved all of us. This is our legacy. This is our truth. This is our life, hard won and well lived, and I wouldn't change a single step of it. He closed the journal, set down his pen, and went to find his wife. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The ranch always needed work. Children would need guidance. Life would continue its relentless march forward. But tonight, Cole Bennett was content. He'd buried 3 men on this land. 2 were his parents. The third was the lonely man he used to be. In their place, he'd planted something that would outlast stone and timber. Love, family, legacy. And it all started with a woman standing in the rain refusing to give up, refusing to be anything less than exactly who she was meant to be. Whole.